Welcome back to the virtual camp series. This is our third session. My name is Karina Boxnick. I'm your State 4-H camping coordinator. And today we are going to make handles for tumblers. This is going to use the same knot that we used in the first session. So let's get started. You are going to need some 1/4-inch Paramax. It's a thicker cord than just your regular 550 cord. You'll also need some 550 cord. If you can't find the 1/4-inch Paramax, you can substitute some 550 cord, and I'll explain that in a minute. You're also going to need a lighter, scissors, a tape measure, a ruler, and you also need a tapered tumbler. You want to make sure it does have a taper, whether it has this middle bump or not, it doesn't matter. But if it is totally straight, you will not be able to get a good friction fit like what you will on a tapered tumbler. So make sure it has some kind of taper to it. This tumbler is a 40 ounce. This is a 28-ish ounce. I'm going to use the same measurements for this one as I did for this one. So if you have a bigger or a smaller, you can always increase your measurements if you need to. So you are going to need 3 feet of this Paramax Paracord. I've already cut some off right here, so I'm going to set this big bulk aside. And what we're going to do is we are going to fuse the 2 ends together. And this is going to take just a little bit because it's quite a bit thicker cord than your 550 cord. So I like to try to melt them sort of at the same time. That way they're hot together. And be careful when you are melting these. If it gets too melty and drips, it can burn you and it will leave a scar. I know from personal experience. So take my word for it, it hurts. I'm just going to keep melting this until it looks like it's going to fuse together good. And you may have to try it more than once. If it doesn't melt and hold, you can always remelt and restick. Remember, it's going to be hot, so try to keep your fingers out of it. So I'm going to do a little bit of work right here just because it's coming off of the center of the paracord. If you think it looks kind of ugly, that's okay. We're going to hide it with the braid after a while. I'm going to use kind of the middle part of my lighter until it's cool enough for me to kind of touch a little bit. All right, so I've got that done. I'm going to kind of measure my tumbler, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick the joints in the middle instead of at the end on one of the loops. So I'm going to put it over the top, and I'm going to go just above where this rib is in the middle, and I'm going to hold it, and then I'm going to kind of flop it over so it makes another loop around the base, and keep it kind of close to the bottom there. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to get a measurement so I know how much of the 550 cord I need. So you may have to get somebody to help you. What you're going to do is you're going to hold those 2 spots, move your cup out of the way, and then open up your tape measure. And you want to measure the distance between those 2 spots where you're holding. So I've got, looks like right at 8 inches. So that tells me how much of the 550 cord I need. And you're going to need approximately 2 feet 2 inches of 550 cord for every inch of finished knot that you need. So I've already measured out the 550 cord that I need. And if you watch the first video, you'll know that I like to not waste any more than necessary. So I've put a simple knot at the end of my measurement just to kind of hold my spot so I don't have to cut it off of my roll here. That way, if I have a little bit of extra at the end, it just stays on my roll and I don't waste that piece. So I've got the center of my 550 cord. I am going to separate my 2 ends so that I know which one is the shorter one and which one is the longer one. I'm gonna lay out my Paramax, and you're gonna take the middle and you're gonna put it behind the Paramax. And I'm gonna start with my longest strands, and I'm gonna go behind the Paramax and form a loop to the side. And I'm gonna take my shorter strands, and I'm gonna go behind the longer strands, over the 2 strands of Paramax and down through this loop. And pull it all the way through. And then you want to pull it tight. I'm going to repeat that same process. I'm going to start with my longer strands behind my 2 pieces of Paramax. I'm going to take my shorter strands behind the longer strands, over the 2 pieces of Paramax, and down through this loop. Pull it tight. So I'm going to pause there for just a minute. I'm going to fit my loop to the top part of my tumbler. So I'm just going to slide it in and up over this middle ridge. If it doesn't slide up, you can pull the knotted portion down. But what we're going to do is we're going to make this as tight as we can get it. And don't go too high because it's going to use a friction fit. So even when I get this tight, once we get totally done, it's going to slide up even higher on your tumbler. So you want to keep it kind of low. And if you don't have this middle ridge, just kind of go about halfway up your tumbler. So I think I can get it a little bit tighter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the piece of Paramax that does not have my joint in it, and I'm going to hold my knot, and I'm going to pull that piece of Paramax towards me while I push the knot towards the tumbler. That'll give me as snug a fit as I can get on my tumbler. Then I'm just going to slide this back off, set my tumbler out of the way, and I'm going to continue knotting. So I'm taking my long strands behind the short strands, or behind the 2 center strands, and take my short strand behind the long strand, over the 2 center strands, and down through this loop. And like I said, this uses the same knot that we did in session 1. So I'm going to talk you through a couple more, and then I'm just going to start knotting. So I'm taking my long strand behind my 2 center strands, taking my short strand behind the long strand, over the 2 center strands, and down through this loop. And remember, this cobra weave uses alternating sides on where you start. And once you get to this joint here in the middle, just knot it wherever it lands. If it lands in between, that's fine. If it lands right on top, that's okay too. If it lands in between, you're not going to see it once we do our second layer. So I'm taking the long strands behind these 2 center strands. I'm taking the short strand behind the long strands, over the 2 center strands, and then down through this loop. Pull it tight every time. So I'm going to continue all the way until I get a loop down here that I think will fit over the bottom of my tumbler. And then I'll pause and test the fit on my tumbler and add a few more knots if I need to. think I'm gonna pause there and test the fit on my tumbler. So we've already test fitted the top of the tumbler. We're gonna test fit the bottom of the tumbler on this end. I'm just gonna slide it on. So I need to do another inch or so of knotting. So I'm gonna go a little bit longer and then I'll test fit it again. Let's test fit again. Slide it in there. And similar to what we did on the top, just going just over halfway, I want to test fit it down here at the bottom of the tumbler. So I need to go another knot or two. Let's try it one more time. Lay it down. And that's pretty tight. So I'm gonna stop there, take my tumbler back out because we're fixing to start the second half of our knot. I'm gonna pull it tight again. So I've got my handle flipped over because I'm going to work back down towards where I started. So if you'll notice this last knot, one of the pieces of 550 cord comes out the top and the other piece comes out the bottom. So the piece that comes out of the top, I want to stick behind what I've already got knotted, which happens to be my long strand of paracord. And then I'm gonna take the piece that sticks out of the bottom and I'm gonna go behind the long strand, over the center, and then down through the loop. So we're creating a king cobra, but it is a cobra doubled back on itself. So what it's gonna do is it's gonna lay in between and cover up those gaps that we have from our first layer of knotting. And this first one, you'll kind of have to wiggle it around until it fits in the right spot and pull it tight. And we're gonna do the same knot all the way back down. So I've got my long strand behind the center. I'm gonna take my short strand behind the long strand, over the center and down through the loop. I'm pulling it tight. So I'm taking my long strands behind the center, taking my short strand behind the long strand, over the center and down through the loop. So it's going to be that same process all over again. And we're going to do that all the way down until we get down here to this last gap, back to where we started. So one more time, take the long strand behind the center, taking the short strand behind the long strands, over the center and down through the loop. And just kind of work it into place and then pull it snug. Started with the wrong one. If you do that, just back up, get straightened back out, and start again. So long strand behind the center, short strand behind the long strand, over the center, and down through the loop. And what happens if you don't alternate sides, you don't get this nice flat knot, it starts to do a twist. I'm getting close to the end. I'm gonna take out this knot that I've got in that's just holding my place just so it's out of my way. I'm gonna finish this up. Last one. All right, so we're fixing to cut these strands off. Singe the ends and then we'll be finished. So like I said in the first video, instead of wasting this section twice, I only waste it once because I still have this connected to my spool of paracord. So I'm going to snip that one off first just so I can get it all out of the way. I'm going to snip it pretty close to where I ended. Then I'm going to singe my ends. Be careful when you singe your ends that you don't singe on your knot because it will burn through there as well. So I'm going to singe those ends. I'm going to use a lighter. Once I get them singed, I'm going to use the middle part of the lighter and smash it down so it makes a nice clean edge. I'm going to do the same thing on this tail. I'm going to snip it off. Singe that end. I'm going to use my lighter to smash it down. All right, and we are finished. So if you don't have the Paramax, what you can do with just your regular 550 cord is double the length of the Paramax, so 6 feet. You'll combine the ends just like what we did, but you'll loop it twice. So you'll have 2 loops around the top and bottom of your tumbler, and you'll do the body of this knot the same way. And if you want to make them fancier, no matter how you do it, if you want to add a cobra weave around the loop, you can absolutely do that. Just make sure you do that part, the top and bottom loop, before you do your body. You can start the body, but you don't want to finish it because you want to be able to get a dry fit on your tumbler to make sure it's going to work with your tumbler. But otherwise, that completes our project for this time. All right, let's make sure it fits. Let's slide this on there. Flip it over because I know I'm not going to be able to see what I'm doing. Alright, it's looking good. So you see how it slid up higher than where we test fitted it? That's why you want to start low with each of your loops. That way it doesn't fall off of your cup. Otherwise, we are finished. Stay tuned for more episodes. Thank you.